And we're going. So, again, very briefly, let's review the first 5 speeches in praise of love from Plato's Symposium. We have Phaedrus, who begins the dialogues, and he gives this speech where he basically says that love is this great guide. It guides us. It guides our soul towards excellent behavior. We feel ashamed of doing things that are shameful before our lover, and we want to do things that are good so that they'll think highly of us. And we already talked about some of the problems with that. Obviously some issues are, is this really true of all love? Maybe it depends on who you fall in love with, or what your conception of good or bad is to begin with. Love doesn't necessarily guarantee good behavior. Pausanias seems to maybe be a bit of an improvement on this, though. He approaches love differently and says that not all love is the same. We have this sort of hierarchy of love, that sometimes eros is the common sort, whereas in other cases it's the heavenly. And the common sort of love is very fleeting. It doesn't last long. It's mainly concerned with sexual gratification. It's all about quantity over quality. Doesn't care about the intelligence or the well-being of the person that is the object of desire. Whereas the heavenly love is more is a deeper sort of love. It's more long term. It's less fleeting. It's concerned with the well-being and the soul of the individual that someone loves. And then we get to Simakis, and his is probably, I would argue, the least clear of the speeches. He broadens the spectrum, or spectrum's the wrong word. He broadens the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The range, or he broadens the conception of love. The first 2 speeches, and even arguably Aristophanes, well, definitely Aristophanes, they seem to speak of love in very human terms. Eros is the sort of desire that we have for somebody that is, there's a sexual element to it. Whether that's just a short term or long term, that's up for debate. But it has to do with human beings. Whereas Symakis applies this, God of love. He's this being that guides all things that happen in the universe, not just the love between humans, but even the relationship between all the elements within our physical body. And he's got this very simplistic view of medicine, obviously from ancient Greece. We're made up of hot and cold and wet and dry, and the doctor tries to balance these dissimilar elements, and that's what love is like as a doctor. And as a musician composing music, the way that you blend these elements together, the notes and the chords, all this stuff, creating dissonance and then harmony. This is also how love affects music. And then he broadens it to agriculture and the changing of the seasons. And so, again, love is this divine force that is, it's this God that guides all that happens and all that is. Now, we ended with Aristophanes, and I can't quite remember. I had meant to just sort of jump on YouTube and check out the tail end of our video to review, but I just didn't have time. Sort of tinkering around on Blackboard and kind of looking at things. But I'm pretty sure we covered it. I don't know if we want to spend too much time on it, but Aristophanes, I kind of sum this up as the soulmate theory of love, and I've mentioned it I don't know how many times already, so I'll try not to exhaust you with it. I'm not a big fan of this speech. I think it's kind of fun, especially with his little myth of how human beings were once merged together as these double organed beings, right? 2 heads and 4 sets of 2 sets of arms, 2 sets of legs, 2 sets of sexual organs, and that we were merged together, and we cartwheeled our way around the world, and everything was so fine and good until we got sort of big-headed, I suppose, and tried to roll up to Mount Olympus and conquer the gods. And so the gods to prevent us from doing this, they split us in two, and they separated us from our other half. And so we're always going to be looking for that one, you know, that one and only soulmate. And that's what I mean. Aristophanes does not use that term. He doesn't, as far as I can tell. I never read the Greek, but I've never heard that translation. But it's basically what he's talking about, right? I've got this. I'm born incomplete, and love is this search for completeness. And let me find where we left off. I'll find, there's a few passages here where Aristophanes, you know, kind of sums up his view. I'm going to skip all the myth, as fun as it is. This is on page 28 if you have this version of the Plato. Or if you have a different version, it's line number 192 C. It's a couple lines above the C. He says, when a person meets the half that is his very own, whatever his orientation. Oh, that's right. So some of the original, when we originally were created, some of us were double man, some were double woman, and some were, you know, half man, half woman before we were split in two. And so that's what accounts for all of the different sexual orientations. And so he says, you know, doesn't matter, you know, when you meet the other half, whatever your orientation, whether it's to young men or not, then something wonderful happens. The two are struck from their senses by love, by a sense of belonging to one another, and by desire. And they don't want to be separated from one another, not even for a moment. These are the people who finish out their lives together and still cannot say what it is they want from one another. No one would think that it is the intimacy of sex, that mere sex is the reason each lover takes so great and deep a joy in being with the other. It's obvious that the soul of every lover longs for something else. His soul cannot say what it is, but like an oracle, it has a sense of what it wants. And like an oracle, it hides behind a riddle. So this is, to me, this is a very romantic kind of storybook conception of love. And in a sense, I want to give him credence. I don't know how. Again, my sort of memory is sort of meshed together with this class and my TSU class because we're about the same spot here in Plato. I think they're a little bit ahead, so I can't quite remember how far we got. So apologies if I keep repeating myself. But I want to give him a little credit here. I think that there's something to what he's saying here about, you know, the human experience of love. When you fall in love with somebody and there's just some je ne sais quoi, right? There's something you know not what, something that you just can't put you can't put it to words, you can't explain it rationally, but you just fall for somebody and you feel great when you're around them. That you just get this sort of just wonderful feeling when you're in their presence, and when you're not with them, you just can't wait to get back with them, right? I mean, I felt that before. It's been a long time. I'm this old ogre now. This jaded old man or whatever. But I remember feeling this way before. So I think this is a real human experience. So when we're talking about eros or love, I think there's something relevant about this speech. But the notion, to me, that I had problems with is, this I just thought of, is that feeling necessarily indicative of anything real out there in the world? Like, could it be that when I feel this, I just can't be without this person? And could it all be just chemicals, like dopamine rush in your head? Again, I think we talked about this already, so I don't want to dwell on it too long, but the sort of the honeymoon phase. You wanted to say something, Christy? Or?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. How some people cause dopamine to overload release of
Right.
dopamine.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same effects of some drugs. I mean, it's literally the same chemical that, and so when you first meet someone, you get super excited, and they've done studies on this. I don't know how scientific or how good these studies are, but I've read about pop psychology articles about how the average couple, after the first 30 to 90 days, that dopamine rush kind of settles down a bit, and you know that it's sort of like
Yeah,
that.
I'm studying that right now in psychology, and that's what we're going over.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's is it just chemical, right? I mean, obviously, if that's it, then you wouldn't know. It's just you're gonna feel that way, and it's a chemical thing, and you can't explain it, obviously. Um, so I mean, he's talking about something for real. Like this is something that people actually do experience, and I feel like I've experienced it before. Um, this sort of euphoric feeling. And I think some people are able to maintain it for a long time. Maybe maybe that's a soulmate. But to me, I find when you deconstruct, I hate to use that word, but when you sort of pick apart this theory, um, Aristophanes, kind of soulmate theory of love, it's kind of tragic in a way because he's basically saying that each one of us in the whole universe, every one of us is incomplete, that we're somehow always going to be deficient and we're always going to be missing something in our lives, and we're never going to be content until we somehow find this other person who we can somehow merge with in a sense and will complete us and make us whole. And if that's not bad enough, there's only one of them. It's not like you've got a bunch of options. I might actually endorse his theory, or I'd be less hesitant to object to it if indeed he said, there are many, people who can complete you, but he's got this sort of, with this sort of myth that backs it up. No, in this world of 6 billion people, or I guess you have to cut that number in half because most of us we're either attracted to one gender or the other. Maybe the bisexual people have more options, but according to his myth, you're either matching with someone of your own gender or someone who's the opposite gender, and so that's your soulmate. And so that cuts the population in half right there. You got to look through 3 billion people before you find the one. What's the likelihood you're going to meet this person? That's kind of like pretty sad. I'm not really sure I'm happy with the idea that you need someone to complete you either. People might be able to have a fulfilling life without having a soulmate, or maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems like there's some people that might be able to get something out of their career, or out of if they're an artist, their art or their music, or if they're scientists, like maybe they get married, but that's not the thing that is the most important thing in their life, I suppose. But anyway, that's my beef with Aristophanes. To his credit, though, I suppose, um, part of his theory involves the idea that if you're a good person and you please the gods and you live a virtuous life, that the gods will somehow look after you and will guide you towards this one, this soulmate. So I guess that's somewhat of a consolation, although how does he know that, right? It seems like he's just pulling all this mythology and stuff out of his, what. I'm going to move on from Aristophanes right now because I think we've already talked about this and we've gone over it. So if anybody has anything they want to say, feel free to jump in. I don't want to rush ahead. We've got one more, I guess, major of the first 5 major speeches to go. And so you'll be set for your paper this weekend. Let's do this weekend. The paper, that is if you're going to write about the symposium. Some of you might write about the apology. That's fine. But if you're going to write about the symposium, maybe you're going to write about Agathon. So if you want to write about Agathon, you better listen up. We'll be covering that today. And then hopefully this won't take too long. Agathon, unlike Eric Simakis, he's pretty straightforward. He's pretty clear. The one thing about him that's a bit confusing is he's kind of all over the place. He seems to just spit out a list of things about love and doesn't seem to be much of a unifying theme the way there was with the previous speeches. The previous speeches, you could kind of sum each of them up in like one sentence. You could be like, oh yeah, the Phaedrus is the guy that thinks love makes you brave and good and virtuous, and Pausanias says that not all love's the same, and some is heavenly and divine, others more common and just concerned with sex, and Eric Simakis talking about how love is a balancing of these elements, and it doesn't just apply to humans, but also to medicine and music, and then Aristophanes with his soulmate theory. Now, Agathon is not, it's not easy to really sum up his general point, or if he has a general point. I have my guess, and I think there's like a paragraph towards the end of his speech where he seems to be trying to draw everything together. And so, you know, I'll give you my sort of reading of you know, how to kind of sum up his speech. But there's one thing about his approach that I guess you could arguably say is better. Remember, I mentioned this before in previous meetings, that one popular way of reading this dialogue is that each of the speeches gets better, that each one gets closer and closer to the truth and a fuller and more fully worked out account of what eros, this type of love, truly is. And so one thing about Agathon's speech that might be evidence of this reading, that might back up this reading, is his approach. He talks about this at the beginning of his speech. In fact, let me just go ahead and read it, and then we'll kind of unpack it. It's on page 32. If you have, you know, this edition of the book, line 195a, thereabouts. It's actually a little bit above that. Agathon says, I wish first to speak of how I ought to speak, and only then to speak. In my opinion, you see, all those who have spoken before me did not so much celebrate the god as congratulate human beings on the good things that come to them from the god. So Agathon does something here that you're going to see Socrates do later. He kind of chastises the previous speakers for approaching this the wrong way. He says that, you know, first off, I have to correct you guys for doing this wrong. You're not praising Eros. You're not praising the god correctly. You're, instead of praising the god, you're praising what the god does for us. So I guess you could say this is a human-centric approach. You talked about what gifts the god of love, Eros, brings to us. But who it is who gave these gifts, what he is like, no one has spoken about that. So we've got to talk about who it is. Who is Eros? Who is this god? And what is he like? What is the nature of this being, of this divine being? So, and maybe, again, this is the best way to do it. You're going to see Socrates, in a sense, kind of follows a similar, I wouldn't say it's the same, but he follows a similar strategy. We've got to get clear about what Eros is and define it in its own right. What are the essential properties of this god? What is this deity? And then we can praise it. Only one method is correct for every praise, no matter whose. You must explain what qualities in the subject of your speech enable him to give the benefits for which we praise him. So explain what Eros is, and then why, and that explanation, that description should explain why he's so great and why he brings about all this great stuff, all these great benefits. So how does he begin, right? The first thing he says is that, even though all the gods are happy, love, Eros, if I may say so without giving offense, is the happiest of them all. For he is the most beautiful and the best. So the first thing, he's the happiest, the most beautiful, the best. He doesn't really expand on that much, those three qualities. He comes back to the beautiful part a little bit later. But I guess he does elaborate a little bit on the beautiful here, because he says his great beauty lies in this. First, Phaedrus. And why is he addressing Phaedrus? Well, because he says he's the youngest of the gods. Remember, if you remember way back when, Phaedrus was the first speech, and he begins his speech by saying that love is the oldest of the gods. But Agathon contradicts him here. He says, sorry, Phaedrus, you're wrong. Eros, love, is the youngest. Why would he say that, though? I'm not really quite sure this is a very good argument. But who did the reading and who remembers this part? Why is he the youngest? This is not very politically correct, by the way. And I'll give you a hint. Maybe you can just sort of, if I give you a hint, you can just figure it out, even if you didn't do the reading or if you forgot. his argument seems to be based on the opposite assumption of Simakis. Remember, Simakis said something about love, that it's sort of how dissimilar subjects desire dissimilar objects. He seemed to be implying that opposites attract. But Agathon seems to be operating under the complete opposite assumption, that like attracts like, that like is drawn towards like, that birds of a feather flock together kind of thing. So, given that, then why would he say that why would he say that love is the youngest of the
Well,
gods?
it mentions that love always lives with young people more than older people, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Right. Maybe I sort of proved his point earlier when I was talking about how, I was explaining how I felt this way that Aristophanes described. I felt like, I was so happy to be around this woman who I felt in love with, and I felt horrible to be away from her, and couldn't wait to be in her company. And maybe that was just dopamine, maybe that was just some chemical reaction in my brain. But it happened a long time ago when I was young, and it seemed like it happened more often when I was young. And so that feeling happens to people who are more young, but also, and this is, I guess, the more politically incorrect interpretation, is that people are drawn towards younger. Younger is more attractive. And so that's why, how does he put it here? Let me read the actual passage. He proves my point by fleeing old age in headlong flight, fast moving though it is. Love was born to hate old age and will come nowhere near it. Love always lives with young people and is one of them. The old story holds good, that like is always drawn to like. There it is, that assumption that like attracts like. And though on many other points I agree with Phaedrus, I do not agree with this, that love is the most ancient, or is more ancient than Kronos or Iapetus. No, I say he's the youngest of the gods and stays young forever. And he goes on to talk about, some of these older gods. If you read the older myths of like the Titans, the ancient gods, the ancient, primal deities, there was a lot of war and destruction, and even, fathers killing their sons and sons killing their father. I mean, they were gods, so I guess they go by different rules because they're gods. But Zeus killed his father Kronos. Kronos tried to kill, or did kill, all of his siblings, or ate them. They were like trapped in his belly for eons or whatever, till Zeus saved them and killed his father. And he's arguing that, look, if love was there, if Eros was at the beginning of time, then there would be none of these wars. There wouldn't have been all these violent clashes amongst the gods. I'm not so sure what a strong argument that is, right? But his earlier point that, love is always found in younger people, and love is attracted to youth and repelled from old age. Not a very politically correct, and maybe not even an accurate account of love, right? Don't old people still find love, right? Aren't older people still finding, going on, maybe, I'm sure there's like dating apps for like seniors or whatever, like seniorsmeet.com or something. Like, I don't know, I'm just assuming.
There is.
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm sure there is. There's like a freaking dating site for every possible demographic you can imagine, and so that's why he says he's the youngest. Why does he say he's delicate? This is line number 195D. It's on page 33. He says, besides being young, he's delicate. It takes a poet as good as Homer to show how delicate the god is. For Homer says that mischief is a god and that she is delicate. Well, that her feet are delicate anyway. He says, hers are delicate feet. Not on the ground does she draw nigh. She walks instead upon the heads of men. A lovely proof, I think, to show how delicate she is. She doesn't walk on anything hard. She only walks on what is soft. We shall use the same proof about love. to show that he is delicate. For he walks not on earth, not even on people's skulls, which are not really soft at all, but in the softest of things that are. There he walks. There he has his home. What is he talking about here? This is very poetic, but I think he actually has a kind of a point here that's not just all poetry. Why would he say he's delicate? Because he doesn't find his home. If love is a god, if love, when you feel love, that's the god, right? That's eros moving your spirit or your soul or whatever, your emotions. Why would he say he's delicate, right? He doesn't make his home on people, on he's not on earth, he doesn't walk on people's skulls. He makes his home in the softest of places. Where is love? Where do you find love? What are these soft places that he's speaking of? Well, he says it right there if you just read the next line. Just kind of quizzing you guys. Where is love felt? Where is love? Is love like located in this water bottle? Is it in my liver? Is love in the liver?
Well, it depends on what you define soft.
Yeah, I guess. But what do you think his point is? I'm getting at, like, where is love located that entails that it must be delicate, or it's located in these delicate places. What delicate places? What's he talking about?
Well, he also mentions that love is like a fluid in his nature. So I'm guessing within the human being, like love happens everywhere as long as like everybody knows what love is. Like everybody has a part of love within themselves.
Okay, good. Where is it at in themselves? Like, where is love in themselves? Is it like, again? Is it in your liver? Is it in your kidneys? Is it in your what's that? Your heart?
Maybe?
Is it in your
In your
heart?
feet.
It's in your feet.
Yeah.
Okay. I always thought it was in your nose, but
Oh.
I was just watching that Fruit Loops commercial. Just follow your nose. It always knows.
No, it's your brain, though, right?
Brain. Okay, good. That's
No.
probably your best. That would be probably the more scientific answer, I guess. Right? That especially we were talking about dopamine being released earlier. Maybe that's where love is. If you're looking for a physical location, he's not looking for a physical location though. But he wants to say it's in us though. He says he makes his home in the characters, in the souls of gods and men. So in our soul, whatever that is, that's a very metaphysical concept. It's our spirit, our soul, our character, and not even in every soul that comes along. When he encounters a soul with a harsh character, he turns away, but he finds a soft and gentle character, and then he settles down in it. Always then he's touching with his feet. Well, there's the feet right there. Maybe he is in the feet, right? He's touching with his feet, with the whole of himself, what is softest in the softest places. He must therefore be most delicate. And then he goes on to say that he's fluid and supple. So why would he say that? Let's read on. He says he's youngest, most delicate. In addition, he has a fluid, supple shape. For if he were hard, he would not be able to enfold a soul completely or escape notice when he first entered it or withdrew. Besides, his graceful good looks prove that he's balanced and fluid in his nature. So what's his point there? What is it about our human experience of love that makes it seem like love is fluid and supple? The way he puts it is, if he wasn't this way, he wouldn't be able to enfold a soul completely, or he wouldn't be able to escape notice when he entered or withdrew from a soul. So in other words, what's he saying? What is it about love that makes it seem fluid and supple? How else can we put this? Like, how would you paraphrase what he just said?
Unpredictable.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know. Like, it's no, I don't know. I'm just getting this, just no sexuality. Like, it's for everybody. I don't know.
Yeah, that, I think he's trying to be like, you're right to maybe think that way, because I think he's trying to be very broad with his interpretation of love the way Eric Simakis was. But I don't think he's trying to take away the sexuality part. He's just saying that's one aspect of it, but it goes even beyond that. There's other parts to it. But it's also a feeling, but I think your one-word answer, unpredictable, has kind of hit the nail on the head. I couldn't have thought of a better word, but I think you still need to explain it a bit. I mean, I'll try if you want me to, but what do you mean by unpredictable? What is it about love that's unpredictable?
Well, like you don't. Well, I don't think like you go into a person knowing that you're gonna love them. It's like it happens
Right.
instantly within time.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't happen from one day to another. Like you have to meet this person, and then like it just like I
All
guess
of a
it
sudden,
turns to
yeah.
porn. Yeah.
You
So
just
it's like
notice. It like sneaks up on you. You're like, holy crap, like I'm in love with this person.
yeah.
It's
It's like
not it's not like you're hey, you know what? Like 30 seconds from now, I'm gonna fall in love with that guy.
or it's not like you go to a person and you're like, oh, I'm gonna love this person. Like I know for sure. Like
Right.
it's unpredictable.
Right, it's unpredictable, and it's not just unpredictable when it's going to come. It's also unpredictable when it's going to leave you. Like when you might feel like completely in love with somebody, and then the next day they do something, or you see them in a new light, or whatever, and all of a sudden it's gone. And you didn't even notice. Like, where'd it go? What happened? Like that feeling's gone. So it comes, it goes, and it's sneaky, right? Like, so it has to be fluid and supple. It's able to completely enfold your soul. And, in the famous cartoon representations of Eros, where, we always see the Roman Cupid, the little baby with the bow and arrow flying around. But, you get hit by that arrow and it's like immediate. And you don't know what hits you. It's just, whoa. It's very sneaky that way. So I guess that's what his point is there. Why does he say that it's moral, though? He I'm going to kind of skip over a lot of this. It starts on page 34 and it goes for a few paragraphs. But he says that Eros is the most moral of the gods. If you know much about some of the myths of Eros, this is kind of a questionable claim that Eros is the most ethical or moral. He seems kind of mischievous, actually, but at least according to most of the stories. But why does he say that he's the most moral? Well, he's moderate. He goes through a list here, Agathon does, of, I guess, what you would call the cardinal virtues of the Greeks. Moderation. We already talked about moderation a bit, the principle of the golden mean, finding balance, not too much, not too little, that sort of Goldilocks, and why is he moderate? Besides I guess he starts with justice, so I guess we should start with justice. This is line 196C. Love is neither the cause nor the victim of any injustice. He does no wrong to gods or men, nor they to him. If anything has an effect on him, it is never by violence, for violence never touches love, and the effects he has on others are not forced. For every service we give to love, we give willingly. So, justice, loosely defined, there's more technical ways of explaining how Plato and some of the Greeks thought of justice, but loosely defined as being fair and in your relations and your dealings with other people. He seems to be saying here that if you have a feeling of love towards somebody, you will never be unjust. You will never be unfair and deceptive in your dealings with other people, right? Your love will prevent you from treating somebody that way. I think that's maybe kind of questionable, right? I think some people actually intentionally deceive or are deceptive to people because they feel in love with them. They're like so in love with them and they're afraid of losing them. And so they play a role, or they pretend they're somebody they're not, or they hide certain aspects of who they are, in order to present. I don't know. So I don't know about this being just, that love will never cause you to be violent or unjust to somebody that you're in love with. I I don't know if I'm buying that argument. What about moderation, though? That's the next thing. He says, besides justice, he's the biggest share of moderation. For moderation, by common agreement, is power over pleasures. That's actually more of like a very technical, like limited version of moderation. Like that's what like people like Aquinas and the early Christians would refer to as temperance, not necessarily moderation, but power over pleasures and passions. And why is love? And love has power. I guess I could give him that one, right? That love has power over our passions. When we're in love, sometimes if it's super intense, maybe that makes us willing to do really stupid, idiotic things for the sake of it. But I don't think that sounds very moderate, right? Like unless it's like moderating, like telling what to do, but like keeping it at bay, I don't know. As for bravery, right, that's another one of the cardinal virtues, right? So he's moral, he's virtuous. So one of the virtues is bravery, and his proof is that love can even stand up to the god of war, Ares. Even Ares can't control his love for Aphrodite. So, you know, even the god of war can't handle Eros, then he must be pretty tough and brave and whatever. His wisdom remains. So what about his wisdom? I must try not to leave out anything that can be said on this. In the first place, to honor our profession, as Simakis did his, the god is so skilled a poet that he can make others into poets. Once love touches him, anyone becomes a poet, however uncultured he'd been before. This, we may fittingly observe, testifies that love is a good poet, good in some at every kind of artistic production. So this is another one that I take issue with. Maybe it's because I'm a cynical old man and I don't like mushy love songs. So I don't want to sound like a total like stick in the mud cynical person. There's some beautiful poetry out there that's inspired by love. There's some beautiful love songs out there. But to me, most of the stuff that's out there is really corny, I think, and kind of hokey and cheesy. So this idea that if you're inspired by love, that you're automatically going to be a good artist or a good poet because of your inspiration. I've heard and I've read some pretty stinky love poems out there. But this is, I guess, supposed to be a proof of his wisdom, that he's such a good artist and a good poet. Love inspires the greatest artistic productions. He makes animals reproduce. That's the next thing that's listed there. I'm skipping over quite a bit here so we can kind of get to the end and move on to Socrates. This is an interesting thing I didn't put here on the slideshow, but he talks about how artisans and professionals, their love for their profession is what sustains it, because they love their craft. They're able to pass on their love and their skill to their apprentice, and their apprentice becomes a master of that skill, and they have a sort of respect and honor about it, and that love guides them and makes them make really good and beautiful things, and continue the tradition. Again, then he goes on to talk about how the gods' quarrels were settled by love and etc. Let's get to the paragraph I was mentioning earlier. This is close to the end of his speech where he kind of sums it up. So maybe this is after he's sort of explained who love is and what love's qualities are. He's going to praise love. Now he's ready to praise love properly and explain what is so great about love. And again, this is sort of my interpretation. There's other readings of this, but let's read the paragraph. And to me, this is kind of the summary. It's on page 37. It's line 197D. He says, love fills us with togetherness and drains all of our divisiveness away. Love calls gatherings like these together. In feasts, in dances, and in ceremonies, he gives the lead. Love moves us to mildness, removes us from wildness. He's giver of kindness, never of meanness. Gracious, kindly, let wise men see and gods admire. Treasure to lovers, envy to others. Father of elegance, luxury, delicacy, grace, yearning, desire. Love cares well for good men, cares not for bad ones. In pain, in fear, in desire or speech, love is our best guide and guard. He is our comrade and our savior, ornament of all gods and men, most beautiful leader, and the best. Every man should follow love, sing beautifully his hymns, and join with him in the song he sings that charms the mind of God or man. And so he moves on, he passes the torch to Socrates, and we're going to see here in a minute that Socrates doesn't quite make it easy. He wants to spend some time chastising everybody else for how crappy their speeches were. But let me give you my sort of summary of Agathon. I suppose, just reading that last passage, to me, the unifying theme is unity, I suppose. Didn't mean to be redundant there, right? But as I have written here on the slide, love brings brings togetherness and ends divisiveness. So it unifies us, brings us together, ends all sort of divisiveness. It's a great unifier, as I have put in the parentheses there. I guess if you had to sum it up, right? That's what makes this God so darn great. And that's it, I guess, for the speeches. That's it for the first 5 speeches. Now we're ready to finally move on to good old Socrates, the grand finale. And honestly, I suppose we shouldn't give Socrates too much credit because apparently he's just plagiarizing all the stuff that he knows about love from Diotima. And she was this seer, I think. How does he describe her? I forget if it's a seer or a prophetess or something like this. Spell her name right. This is something quite curious. In fact, this is something that Plato does quite a bit. You saw this in the Apology, that wisdom seems to come from the gods, but the messenger of the gods is always some holy woman. And some modern feminist interpretations sort of see this as flattering towards the women, or that, Plato is sort of doing this as some sort of like subterranean feminism. But I don't think so. I think this is just a part of their culture. There's a similar a part of the ancient Japanese religion, Shinto, where they have this this belief in this sort of shamanistic tradition of women who go into trances, and they're seen as kind of crazy and kind of nuts. But when they go into these spells and they go kind of nuts and crazy, that's the gods possessing them, and they're able to speak kind of weird prophetic poetry that's hard to decipher, but if you understand it, you unpack it, it has some sort of spiritual truth. And so, I mean, who knows why Plato uses this a lot? There's many ways to interpret it. Maybe he's trying to say that ultimately, any kind of wisdom is on this higher level, this sort of divine level. It has to be sort of revealed. We get glimpses of truth. By the end of this week, we're going to finally wrap up Plato. And pretty soon here, too, we're going to get to the end. And we're going to have to get really metaphysical. We're going to bring it back to the allegory of the cave. And this dialogue is going to take a pretty hard turn towards, I mean, you think Eric Simakis got cosmic. Socrates takes it on a whole other level here. But again, he's speaking the knowledge that he gained. He's speaking of the knowledge that he gained through his encounters with this holy woman, Diotima. But again, he won't just start his speech. He has to chastise all of his friends, and he does it quite ironically. I mean, he acts like, I don't think I'm worthy of this. I don't think I'll be able to, excuse me, I don't think I'll be able to deliver a speech. I thought I was going to be able to do this, but when I started listening to all your speeches, I realized that I was mistaken. I thought I understood what it meant to give a speech in praise of something or someone. But now that I hear your speeches, I think I don't really get, I guess I'm wrong about what it means to praise someone or something. What's wrong with their speeches? How is it? Why are they doing it wrong according to Socrates? Or why? What is he assuming and about how you're supposed to? How are you supposed to praise somebody? Let me find the passage I'm looking for. Page 37. Oh, 38. It's line 198D. Socrates is talking. He says, I realized how ridiculous I'd been to agree to join with you in praising love and to say that I was the master of the art of love when I knew nothing whatever of this business or anything of whatever about how anything ought to be praised, how I'm supposed to praise things. In my foolishness, now he's being ironic here, right? He's kind of being a smart ass. In my foolishness, I thought you should tell the truth about whatever you praise, and that should be your basis, and that from this a speaker should select the most beautiful truths and arrange them the most suitably. I was quite vain, thinking that I would talk well and that I knew the truth about praising anything whatever. But now it appears that that's not what it is to praise anything whatever. Rather, and again, I think he's being a smartass here. He doesn't really believe this. He says, rather, it is to apply to the object the grandest and the most beautiful qualities, whether he actually has them or not. And if they're false, that's no objection. For the proposal apparently was that everyone here just make the rest of us think he's praising love, and not that he actually praised love. So what's the issue with their speeches? Why does he not approve of their speeches in praise of love? They're going about the wrong way. How so?
I'm not sure if this is true, but I feel like they focused completely on like the positives and didn't include anything negative.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's what he's getting at.
I think you're close. I think you're close to what he's saying, or at least you're on the right track. I think what Socrates is actually accusing them of is actually even worse than that. You know, somebody else wanted to jump in, or?
Yeah, I think that he's trying to say that like whenever you speak about love, you always focus on the other person, but you never really focus on like yourself and like it's like because he says where's the line that I'm trying to look for? I can't find the line right now, but I think he kind of wants to say that love is not just about loving somebody else. It's just more. It's also like you having those qualities to offer about somebody else.
I think he gets to that later, actually. At least if you're talking about what I'm thinking you're talking about, you might be thinking of a passage later on, actually, when he actually starts to get to talking about love itself. But right now, he's making a similar claim about these guys that he made at the very beginning of the first reading that we did, the apology. Remember at the very beginning of the apology when he said something like, he said that his speakers, they almost convinced him. Like, you know, they were so persuasive in the way that they spoke, even though nothing of what they said was true. And so he distinguishes himself between, you know, he doesn't speak persuasively, he speaks truthfully. And you know, we mentioned the Sophist. It's been a while since I talked about the Sophist. Remember the Sophists? They were the ones who taught rhetoric, and they taught rhetoric so you could just convince people. You could tell them what they wanted to hear, or you could manipulate them with words. Truth and being honest Has nothing to do with it. You just wanted it to sound good. You want it to sound convincing. And so he seems to be saying something not exactly the same, pretty similar here, that they're not really being honest. They're not speaking the truth about love. They're just actually making stuff up. So it's actually even worse than what you said, Shelley. Like, how did you put it? You're like, well, they're kind of just focusing on the good things and ignoring the bad.
Yeah.
It's like they're actually worse. They're actually, not only are they ignoring the bad, but they're making up good stuff about, and he doesn't think that's not the proper way you praise something. Like Shelley, what if I praised you for your beautiful blonde hair?
Nah, that would be so incorrect.
You know what I mean? Like, are you talking about the same Shelley? Like, what are you, like, I'm like, you have this great, I love your blonde hair. Like, you don't see that many blondes anymore. Like, the ones you do, like, they just look, like, but it really looks great with your eyes. Like, it kind of matches your complexion. Like, I like that you're a blonde. And you're like, are you freaking colorblind? Like, what are you, like, And so that's kind of what Socrates is like. I was sitting here, like, thinking y'all were going to praise love. And I'm like, what the hell are y'all talking about? That's not the love that I know. I've never seen that love before. That's not to say that there aren't things to praise love for, but he's kind of saying, you guys are just making crap up that sounds good. You're just making stuff up that sounds great. But you're not really getting to the truth, and you're not praising love for, how does he put it? In order to praise properly, this should be your basis. Or actually, let me back up. What does it say? You should tell the truth about whatever you praise. You got to be honest. You can't be like, saying someone's blonde when they're brunette, you got to be honest about them. And he says, and this is kind of the less clear part, you select the most beautiful truths and arrange them most suitably. So maybe in a way, Shelley, maybe in a way, he kind of doesn't have a problem with ignoring the bad stuff, because you got to praise them. But at least you got to be honest about the good stuff. You can't just make up good stuff. You got to praise them for actual good qualities they have, and ones that really matter. I don't think hair color will be that important to Socrates, right? But that was just the example that popped into my head. So how's he gonna praise love? Well, the first thing he does is he has to explain, in a way you could argue that Agathon tried to do this. I suppose he failed. But Agathon tried to describe love first and explain what it is and kind of give us a definition of it. And so this is sort of what Socrates does. This is the section in your book they labeled it Socrates Questions Agathon. It starts on page 40. I don't think I'm going to read much of this. In fact, I might skip most of it. But he basically asks him, he says something to the effect that he agrees with some of what the previous speakers said, that that love involves a sort of desire, and it is a desire for beautiful things. Okay, and so when you love something, what that really means is you desire that thing that you love. So love is always of something. I guess that's sort of how we could sort of start this. How does he put it? This starts, like I said, on page 40, continuing all the way to the top of page 42. He says, when you love something, that you desire it, right? Love always involves desire. So it's always, I guess love is always desire of something. So there's always an object of love. Okay, and what does love desire according to their account? This is on line 201B or two. Let's start on 201A. He says, remember, in addition to these points you said in your speech about what it is that love loves. If you like, I'll remind you. I think you said something like this, that the gods' quarrels were settled by the love of beautiful things, for there is no love of ugly ones. Didn't you say something like that? Yeah, so we skipped over that when we were going over Agathon, but he said something similar about beauty and ugliness, right? Or no, he's about old age and youth, right? Love flees from old age, right? Same thing for ugliness. Love flees from ugliness, however you define that, right? And love desires beauty. Okay? So love involves desire, and it's always desire of something, and it's desire of something beautiful. I'll put beautiful in all caps, right, to emphasize that, right, of something beautiful. And so he argues that because of this, love cannot be beautiful. And so so Agathon is wrong. Okay. You know, if love, you know, I guess this is sort of like his working definition now. Love is a desire for beautiful things, whatever that means. It's kind of a vague phrase, beautiful things. But I mean, so I guess you could say that beautiful things is a controversial. What is beautiful, right? But what we love, we at least perceive as beautiful, right? We perceive it as something desirable. We have a desire for it, and so they all sort of agree on this. They're like, "Yeah, I think you're right, Socrates. Yeah, that kind of fits our definition, and okay, we'll go with this." But then he says, "Well, if that's the case, then love cannot be beautiful itself. Why not? Why not, do you think? What's his argument for why can't love be beautiful? If we define it this way, if love is a desire for beauty, for beautiful things, would you desire? This is the question he asks Agathon. He says, "Would you desire? Is it possible to desire something that you already have?" Like, can I say, I really want to sit down right now? Does it make sense to say that if I'm already sitting down? Like, I really want to take a seat. I really want to be on Zoom right now. Like, I desire being on Zoom. Like, if I said that, which I just did, wouldn't that confuse you? You'd be like, wait, I can't really tell because I can only see, I can only see you from the shoulders up, but it seems like you're sitting down. It seems like you're on Zoom. Why do you say you desire to be on Zoom? So he says, look, it doesn't make sense to desire something. Nobody desires something that they already possess, that they already have. So if love desires beauty, then it has to lack beauty. And he brings up a couple, couple examples that might seem like that might be contradictory to this. They might be counter examples. He mentions health, right? Couldn't you say that I desire to be healthy, even though you already are healthy? He says, yes, I guess one could say that, but what you really mean is not that you want health, but that you want to continue to be healthy. You're already healthy, let's say. It makes sense for somebody who's sick to say they want to be healthy, but if we're being really strict about it, what you really mean is that you want to continue being healthy. You want to continue in the state. Let's say you're already strong. Maybe you're a weightlifter and you're able to bench press like twice your body weight or something like this. So, if you say, I want to be strong, well, you already are strong. What you mean is you want to maintain your strength, or maybe get stronger or something like that. So this is sort of Socrates' proof that love is not beautiful. Does that mean love is ugly?
No, it's not.
No. Right. So what is it? If it's not ugly and it's not beautiful, then what would you call that?
Love is sweet. It's sweet.
It's weak? I don't know if that's
sweet. Right. It's very sweet.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
A sweet thing.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's the right. Yeah, I guess maybe sweet would be one. But that would be like in between bitter and I don't know what savory. I guess I don't know. Like, is that the spectrum? But like, we're looking for like, what's the middle between ugly and beautiful? Is there a middle? What would you call that?
Mediocre.
Mediocre. Yeah. Average. Mediocre.
It's a 5.
What's that?
It's a 5.
A 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Let's get a chart going here because he does this for a lot of different things. Okay. Let me see how many tables. I'll do a 2 and 2. Or no, let's do 3. Okay. So I guess ugly will be the bottom of the spectrum and beautiful is at top. And then we said mediocre, a 5. Average, I guess. Okay, average. I'll put average looking. Average. And this is where it gets interesting. This is where we're in the next section where he tells us the story of how he visited Diotima and how he was having the same issues, that he actually gave a speech in praise of love very similar to Agathon, and Diotima basically did the same thing he just did to Agathon and kind of chastised him, and he pretty much got to the same point, and Diotima said, how dare you say that God is ugly? That's blasphemous. You think that just because someone's not beautiful they have to be ugly? Isn't there something in the middle? He says, I suppose so, right? There's just, average looking, right? You're not ugly, you're not beautiful, right? You got, ugly, I guess at the bottom, that's the Quasimodo or whatever. And, beautiful, that's, Professor Ross, super handsome, And then there's just, right in the middle, average. But this is the shocking part, right? That Diotima says that love is not even a god, right? He says, so love is, and also love is not good either. So that's one. She doesn't really elaborate on this much. Love is not good or bad. Love is neutral, I suppose. Again, there's no sort of elaboration on that one. Let me insert. But the next one is that love is not even a god, right? Or no, that isn't the next one. The next one is that God is in between ignorance and wisdom. Right? Let me insert another row below. So ignorance, wisdom. Let's see. Mortal, immortal. What is in the middle between ignorance and wisdom? What is in the middle between mortal and immortal? I don't know. We're out of time, so we're going to have to fill in the blanks next class. Okay. Sorry to end so abruptly, but I just realized that it's already 3:45. So let me close up the PowerPoint here. I got most of you on the attendance roster, so if you were here earlier, you can go ahead and log out if you like, or if you have any questions, you can stick around. But if you got here a bit late, stay on the meeting for a little while so you make sure you get credit for being here. I'm going to stop recording now, so if you want to